Monday, April 22nd. I'm at that age in life where I can't see that without my glasses, and I can't see this without my glasses. I'm struggling today. First thing on the agenda for today's meeting is special presentations and public comments. Before we have our presentation by Cleveland Utilities and Authority, is there anyone wishing to speak to the council from the public comment section? If you'd please come to the podium and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Dan Jones. I'm in the 5th District, and I heard there was going to be a roast today because we had some folks that are retiring. And Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I have had a chance to, I don't know Avery very well, but we got to walk one time in the MLK walk. And you know, he's just been around and took care of us for a long time. And I've got a little bit more to say about Mr. Hughes. We go way back. When I was playing basketball at Bradley in Cleveland State, he was coaching at Lee College. And I had a chance to go over and scrimmage against him. And my good friend, David Montgomery, was my mentor. And David played for Dale. And they used to take me out in the backyard and whip me pretty good. Both him and Mark both.
I just want to know I appreciate your service, and I appreciate Lee, because they have been, you know, a growing influence on our community. I mean, and you don't have to necessarily be Baptist or Methodist or whatever, because we've got our music director at Wesley Memorial, choir director,
our associate pastor, our praise team leader, all from Lee. So we appreciate what y'all give to the community in his name. We really appreciate it. I've got notes on my phone. I got some other things to say about some traffic. What y'all have done, I don't know who took care of this, but at Paul Huff and Mouse Creek, where y'all expanded that right by the schools, great job. And as I'm trying to get over here today, around noon, y'all know the traffic situation in Cleveland, we have still got a lot to do. But I appreciate what you've done so far. And I was talking to somebody the other day, because you've got all this closed off up here. And unbeknownst to me, y'all actually had like I was in the National Guard for years, but y'all had like a sand table in here and had people come in and mark their spots and do all that. And that was great. Except I didn't know about it. And that's okay. But the communication, I think, needs to be a little bit better to the public. You know, I read the back of the banner, but there's this little bitty thing back there. But I'm telling you what, y'all are doing a lot of good things. And for our chief and our fire department folks, you know, things are getting tough out there for y'all. You know, the world's getting a little more dangerous. But every time I hear that siren, I pray for the folks that are going and whoever you're going to. I really appreciate you. Thank you guys. Appreciate what you do. Good job at the Hall of Fame the other day. The only thing missing was me. I was voted the basketball player with the sexiest legs at Bradley High School back in 1969. But, you know, maybe they'll make that a category or something.
Duly noted.
Thank you, guys. God
Mr.
bless.
Jones, thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments. All right, anyone else seeking to address the council during this public comment period? Seeing none, it's great to have everyone here today, and we will begin with special presentations. From the Cleveland Utility Authority, we have a budget presentation followed by a broadband update.
All righty. Well, thank you for allowing us to come today. It's always good to get up before you. And Dale, as I came in, you appropriately said we're right on the front row, and we said we weren't on the firing line. We hope. So that's okay. But it's good for us to be here. If you guys will recall back when we established the authority, part of the Articles of Incorporation ask that the authority come and present to you all budget-wise. So we're here to talk a couple of things today. We're going to talk a little bit about our budget, and we had a request to talk about fiber update and information about the fiber project and how that's going. Now, I'm guessing that one of those is a lot more exciting than the other, so we'll try to get to that more exciting part as quick as we can, to say the least. But this year's budget, I want to say right off the bat, and as you all know, has created probably more of the significant challenges we've seen in historic recent times at the utilities. And that's due for a couple of reasons. A lot of growth, as we all know, that we've seen. A lot of change in expenses, a lot of challenges with supply chain and things of that nature. But we're positioned, I think, to take that challenge on. So about a month and a half ago, we met with our authority board back at the 1st of March and talked very detailed information about what those challenges look like moving in the future. It's a lot, to say the least. And for those of us that are in the business of providing utility services, we can easily recognize those challenges. We've historically had a roadmap at the organization, but we've never had what I call a true formal master plan for our water and wastewater infrastructure. Well, I'll say very quickly, praise the Lord, we have one of those now. And it's important for us to follow that roadmap. We now know what specifically a lot of those real challenges are. And I'm speaking not of just 5 years out, but 10 years out and 15 years out and down the road. So that conversation went very, very well with the authority board, and we have tied a lot of that information into this year's budget, which if you all reviewed some of that, you saw that. But those challenges are not just for the immediate needs that we see today. They're for the needs for the future. Immediate needs for the residents and industries, but the future needs of residents that we have coming, and the future needs of industries that want to come to our community and start a business here. You all, particularly as a council, know those are real for sure. So, having said that, together, and when I use the word together, guys, I'm talking about city councilors. I'm talking about the utility authority. Together, we recognize the importance of prioritizing and moving forward in a proactive way, right? I think that we know that we have to do those things. It's really who we are at Cleveland Utilities, but it's not just who we are, it's who we need to be. It's who we're charged to be. It's responsible for us as a utility to be able to move into the future so that we don't get into a position where we're having to say, we can't do that, or we're not ready to do that. We want to be ahead of that curve, and this budget speaks to that. So my CFO is here today to talk about some of the particulars that I want you all to hear with respect to what those challenges look like. And Marshall will talk about some of the ones that are not just for 2025 budget, but moving forward and what all the way to 2030 looks like. We're trying to be very proactive in how we view what that future looks like for our community from a utility perspective. And I can tell you with confidence, I know that Cleveland Utilities can get there. We have the talent, staff, and expertise to execute it at a high level. And that's what I'm most proud of. And I'm going to bring this young man up first, and he is a prime example of the type of talent and education and expertise that I speak of. So with that, Marshall, come up and talk about some of the particulars, please, sir.
All right. Well, Tim said we were going to talk about the fun stuff. He was meaning this, right? Just so we're all.
He is an accountant.
Yeah. Don't let the accountant speak. But thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and we appreciate the support of the council. Like Tim alluded to, this is probably one of the most challenging budgets that we've ever faced in Cleveland Utilities history. As we're all keenly aware, there have been massive increases, not only in the cost of construction, the operations, the expenses that we all incur in our day-to-day lives. That translates exactly to what the utility has seen over the last 4 years specifically. As we look at what the future holds for our community, as Tim alluded to, we do want to make sure that the utility is positioned in such a way that when the industry comes and says they want to locate at any existing location, in the city, we're prepared to handle that, as well as the growth that we've all seen across the residential spectrum. As these new homes come online, it's not just the infrastructure necessary at that home, it's the infrastructure that's all downline from that has to be sized and has to be built appropriately to serve it into the future. So it's not just your neighbor, it's the next neighbor, and it's the neighbor down the street that we've got to be prepared for. And as you all are keenly aware in our lines of work, having that infrastructure in the ground and ready to serve when that investment opportunity comes is vitally important in today's world. To touch on a few things inside the budget, we thought that it would be good to touch on some of the more larger figures. And so as you all are aware, inside this budget, there are rate increases that are forecasted for all three divisions. But I'll speak specifically to wastewater first. As we're all aware, the utility as wastewater is ever increasing. The need for it is continually increasing. And as we've seen over the last 5 years specifically, the cost associated with operating that utility has skyrocketed. Whether it be chemicals, manpower, or construction, every aspect of that business has increased, just like it has for the city's lines of work. But to put this in real dollars, as you can look at percentages, and unfortunately those are somewhat misleading, how does this affect the residential customer, and what do they see in their monthly bill? The rate increase that's forecasted for wastewater right now equates to roughly $8.50 a month is what the residential customer would see on their bill. And so what's driving that? What is creating that cost increase? If you just look at system operating and maintenance, that has increased 8.5% over the last 4 years, and that's year over year. That's driven by the chemicals that we use, by the construction that we have to do, and by the increases that we've had for the customers. You've also got to look at how much has it cost to install customers. Over the last 4 years, that cost has gone up by 35%. And that's just in the physical connections to get a customer connected to the system. When you look at system improvements, like Tim alluded to, when we build a budget, it's not 1 year at a time. It's the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And if you look down the road for wastewater, right now we've committed to the conversion for the sanitation at the wastewater plant. So we are converting from a gaseous chlorine to an ultraviolet light. That process is underway. That is roughly a $9 million project. The next step at the wastewater plant, though, is to convert to an aerobic digester and blower improvements. That's going to help us to serve our large industries. It's to reduce the ammonia loading at the plant, and that project is estimated to be roughly $16 million. All of these projects are going to take place in the next 2 to 3 years. So as you can see, it's a very large chunk of money that will be spent at the plant in short order. If you look further out into the future for wastewater, this is where it gets a little bit more critical. It's planning for what the next set of infrastructure looks like and what's necessary to serve this growth that the city has seen. If you look from this time to last year, wastewater has added over $100 million in capital projects over the next 10 years. And so the question is, where is that $100 million going to need to be spent? You've got a vast majority of that that's going to be at the wastewater plant. So that wastewater plant was built almost 35 years ago at this point. We're looking at what does the next expansion of that plant look like. That plant expansion will more than likely come online in the next 4 to 5 years. That's roughly a $50 million project. The next improvement would be on the main outfall line. And so that's how we take the wastewater from here in the city proper out to the plant at the Hiwassee River. So it travels through a 42 or 48 inch pipe. That pipe is reaching close to its capacity during wet weather. And so we'll have to make improvements on that pipe. We'll have to go through and rehab portions of that pipe. That's roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 million. All of these things are improvements to continue to have capacity available within the system. So as these new developments come forward for you to approve and to accept in the city, the utility is ready and able to accept those. Something else that's probably important, if you look out over the next 10 years, what does that system look like growth-wise? And so right now, with the proposals that are on the books, as well as the future proposals that we're preparing for, we estimate that that system will grow by 12,500 customers just in 10 years. And for perspective, we're just roughly over 20,000 customers today. So you're looking at a very large increase in a very short period of time as these come online. So to have that capacity available for that number of customers, it's a process that we have to get started for today. If you want to take a look at water next, so that water is increased to be a forecast for roughly $1.95 per customer per month. And this is along the same lines. If you look at the cost increase, the average O&M increase over the 5-year period has been 7.2%. And it's cost us roughly 28.5% more to install a single customer as we move through that time period. Just like in wastewater, as we continue to make improvements in our system, we continue to look for the next and best treatment opportunity at our plants. And so if you look at the water treatment facility, today we're going to convert from a liquid or gaseous chlorine then to a sodium hypochlorite. That will roughly run somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.5 million. But in this same next year, they'll also improve the high service pumps at the plants. And so those are the pumps that provide the water to the city. And that project is looking at roughly $4 million. So in the very short term, we've got several major capital improvement plans, not only for wastewater, but also for water. And then for electric. And so as you're aware, the electric division put in place a rate freeze in 2019. And so for the last 5 years, Cleveland Utilities has not raised its electric rates. Obviously, in that same time frame, the cost to serve electricity has gone up significantly, not only from a power cost, but from an O&M cost. And so the 2% that you see forecasted in that budget for electric has still not been completely formulated. That's a placeholder at this point as we work to ensure that the rate design that we move forward with is something that is sustainable for the customer. We also need to make sure that we align that with the rate increases that we see TVA coming down the road in October, as they forecasted a rate increase also. So that alludes to a lot of what you would see in the budget. A lot of the remaining information that's in here is very similar to what we had last year. But I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have related to the budget. I know this is a different scenario than we've had in the past. I would draw your attention, this is the first time you will see a fiber division budget. And so the numbers for the fiber division are laid out in this budget. As Ken's well aware, it's a whole another section inside the budget now. And so we built out a full section of that. These are projections, as fiber is just at the point now where we're getting close to starting the revenue path. But we do feel very confident about that. And just to look out there, that's why you'll see our employee headcount increasing over the next year is with the growth of fiber and those employees coming online.
7 counting TVA.
So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have or provide any more detail that you'd like to know.
Okay, 3 simple questions.
Councilman Estes, you're
Thanks.
recognized.
Explain to me target ratios on the bond charts.
Sure. So those
Because the
are,
bonds and debt, even though we gave it away, I'm very curious.
yep. So those are some metrics that are set by the market. Most of your bond councils out there will have their own interpretation of what they feel is a necessary coverage ratio. But what that is your ability with cash on hand to cover those upcoming debt expenditures plus any free cash flow.
So the rating agencies are 1.25. You set your minimum at 140.
Correct.
And each of these debt service ratios that you're putting in the charts are where you sit on each issuance. Is that right?
That is based on every year's forecasted cash flows as well as their cash outflows for debt as
So
it is.
it's not a fund balance, or is it? It's not,
It's
but
not.
it's budgeted.
Correct.
Second simple question, how do you spend, you put depreciation in the expense side. As an accountant, explain that to me, and where does that money go?
There's a separate bank account that we keep it in. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. If you're an engineer, you would love that. No, depreciation is the allocation of the purchase cost associated with the asset. And so that's how you would move that cost through the income statement over a said period of time. Different assets have different useful lives, but the theory behind that is if you outlay $10 million for a facility, that $10 million then needs to work its way through your net income statement to show your profitability, assuming that thing has a 10-year, 20-year life. You will eventually work all of that expense through the budget, and at that point, the useful life of that asset has been used up, and thus you would be ready to invest again into the next asset. It's also how you go about
Do you do that with
capturing.
lineman's trucks, or what else?
Yes, so any fixed asset.
Any-
So it's
okay.
anything that is either bolted to the floor, stood up and erected on real property, or is capitalized like a vehicle, or major investments, even technology investments can be capitalized.
Last question. When you were talking about wastewater, you said in the next decade, you're looking at a 50% increase. Where do you get that from when we're only growing 10%, 2% a year, so, 20% on the extreme side, population-wise?
So you're looking at where are your actual lots and how many new lots are projected. Today, I think that number is somewhere in the 5,500-ish range if you looked at the total number of lots. And then you look at that same compounding effect that you're talking about over the next 10 years.
Okay.
And that's how you get to that 12,000-ish
Do you
number.
weight commercial versus residential?
There is an assumption assigned to commercial. The difference is, though, is that a commercial customer has much more expense on the front end and then has much more cost to operate as you move forward. So we do allocate that out, and we allocate that based on our current mix that we have today.
Last question, has anybody contacted CU about updating the urban growth plan?
We did, we got an email, correct?
Yes, Bill, we have had just, a light conversation about our involvement in that. If you'll know, historically in the past, we had one of our vice presidents actually serve on that organization's board at the time. I guess it's called a board. And did not know if he was going to get asked again or not. But in my humble opinion, it would be fantastic to have someone from Cleveland Utilities be able to be a voice as part of that conversation continues moving forward. We need to be involved in that conversation.
Thanks, that's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions for, yes, Councilman Webb?
Marshall, I understand what you're dealing with and the timing, and I just had one question that I wanted to ask, particularly in the wastewater and the environment that we're in with contractors. I'm looking at page 4 under wastewater. There's some pretty hefty investments in the next 4 or 5 years. Do you think you can physically do that much work over that period of time, knowing how difficult it is now with the supply chain issues and labor? That would be the question that I would have, that have you looked at that? And if you haven't, if you could, would that moderate the immediate increases somewhat?
That's a great question, and it's one that I challenge Craig's team with every year. As we're well aware, they've seen massive numbers come through and what they need to do capitally related every year. And up until this current year, I would tell you their track record has somewhat lacked, right? They struggled to get some of that done. But in this current year, they have easily shown that it's doable. A lot of things relate back to the issues we had in 2020, 2021 with getting material and getting contractors lined up. The market is getting better. The availability for these projects is increasing, as well as the staffing out there to complete them. In our most recent RFP, we typically would have anywhere between 2 to 3 bid. They had almost 8
I think.
bid at the last RFP. So it shows us that the market is ample for the work that needs to be done. The next question is it good to invest now, or can you wait to invest? In some of these circumstances, some of these projects have been pushed out just due to the nature of that they could wait. When you add $100 million to your budget, obviously the allocating of when that's going to get done and when that needs to be completed by becomes vitally important. And so what they've done is they've gone in and they've prioritized the ones that they know are necessary today for the capacity necessary to bring on this growth. As we're well aware, the northeast quadrant of our system is growing. And the uniqueness is that has to flow through infrastructure that was not designed for that capacity. And so they have reallocated a lot of the projects to ensure that capacity in that zone is ready. But they have given us all assurance that they believe that they can complete and get these projects done on time.
Are you still getting cooperation from SRF on funding?
We are. SRF has been challenged in the last few years due to the timing and the nature of construction. Obviously, they allocate funds based on projects, and if those projects are then delayed, then their schedules are delayed. But we have already at this point sat down with SRF to provide them a preliminary roadmap of where we know we're going. And they have given us assurances that they will work with us and that they will try to meet our needs in the timelines that we have proposed. That takes review, and as you're well aware of, SRF evaluates how you stand from a rate standpoint. They want to ensure that your rates are set in such a way that you can take on that debt and they feel confident that you'll pay it back. And that's been part of the conversation that we've had with them, is to ensure that we have a rate stream that makes sense for these types of investments. And so as we've worked through this budget, we've been having conversation with them every step of the way. And I know our engineering staff is well in the works right now, especially on some of the larger projects, of making sure they're in the loop so that they're prepared.
Are they still offering everything fixed rate?
Yes, they are. Obviously, their rates have increased like everyone else's. Our most recent rate was related to the Durkee Road annexation project, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.25, 2.5. They've projected by the end of this year, unless there's an easing from the Fed, that they'll probably be somewhere in that 3.25 range. Hopefully, we're going to see rates start to fall at some point this year, though.
Are they doing any of the debt forgiveness anymore?
They have not in the last 2 fiscal years. It'll be related to what the legislature appropriates for them. And then are there any federal grants that you could then qualify for that they could pull into the program?
As far as the plant improvements, the wastewater, what capacity, refresh my memory, what is the capacity now versus what it will be after the improvements?
It's roughly 30 million today. It can do 50% more. So you would essentially have a 45 million gallon plant at that point. We're also studying the effects of storage across the system as well. That would buy you time on some of your major corridor infrastructure projects. That would give you capacity also in those cases.
Do you feel like you're making any headway with the I&I issues?
If you spoke to Greg, he would tell you overwhelmingly yes. As you're aware, there were a number of times during wet weather events you would have 3, 4, 5 overflows. Those are now isolated to maybe once a year, if that. So they've been able to retrieve capacity from the system by fixing the I&I issues, and they continue on that progress. Greg has put out a very aggressive budget for getting that completed, and we're now really in phase 3 of what is scoped in.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions?
Mayor,
Councilman Caston? Yes, sir.
You talk about cost increases of different utilities. Percentage-wise, what are we talking about that the customer's going to see from Cleveland Utilities as far as the increase coming up?
Do you want that perspective of one division or?
No, all of them together,
all
because
three?
it goes the same thing.
An average utility bill would run somewhere in the neighborhood of $300. So you're looking at roughly somewhere between $12 and $13 increase. A little less than 4%.
4%? Okay. Okay, and you talked about costs and those type of things and construction, everything. Believe me, everybody, myself, and everybody sitting here in this room, and you too, know the inflation cost. They're struggling to getting groceries on the table and paying for gas to get to work and stuff at this point, and putting more burden on them. It's just going to make a harder choices where they'll have to do without other things. So, and y'all also running on 8 years cycles, right? So right now you're doing 8 years previous. You're doing those upgrades because when we bring something in, it takes 8 years to put it on the system. Is that correct?
You're talking about annexation?
Annexation, yes.
Annexation
Yeah.
only?
So it's 8 years out, correct?
The tricky part of that, though, in the real world, it would sound like, okay, I don't need that money for 8 years.
No, I didn't say that. I
But-
just say if you need it all at one time, if you can do
Correct.
it a little at a time.
That's correct. So
what
as
I'm
we
getting to.
establish the rate base for what will be in place in 8 years, we do take into account what that investment looks like in year 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, all right, that's it, Mayor.
All right,
Thank you.
any other questions from the council? Thank you, Mr.
One
sorry.
one comment.
Yes, Vice Mayor?
It's been over 20-something, 25 years ago plus. But the one call that I got that scared me to death was the one about annexation. We had annexed a lot of land and people still had not received all the services. And the one that bothered me the most was the one about well water. A lot of people still were on well. And this is in a prominent neighborhood. Matter of fact, the president of Cleveland Utility lived in that neighborhood. And he invited me to come to a meeting, a community meeting, and wanted to know when we were going to get the services of water. They didn't have city water. Most people were still on well, and they didn't have wastewater like they should. They were on septic tanks. And I noticed that we've been annexing a lot of property lately. So how are we doing with the annexation plan? Are we servicing and getting, is it getting better or is it getting worse? Because I know we grew quite a bit.
No, today we are on target. So the Durkee Road project was the last of the pre-existing annexation projects that we have today. Most of the recent annexation projects, due to the nature of the development, the developer is in a hurry. They want to get that installed and they want to get that operating as quickly as they can. And so it's facilitated us with their assistance to get some of these projects done and completed in the ground much sooner. And so that has been beneficial. You bring up a good point, and I think it's important to the conversation today. If you look back at the early 90s, so I spent a lot of time pre-budget going back and looking at those very large annexation periods as they brought lots and lots of property online. What did the rate structure look like back then? How did they absorb that into the system? If you went back and looked, there were double-digit rate increases for 5 years in a row. We're doing our very best to not make that possible. We really want to make sure that we put a revenue stream in place that will give the capital necessary and the debt capacity to bring these projects online to not affect, as Councilman Cassada iterated, to not affect the customer to where they're having to make those hard decisions. We want to make this part of what is the natural progression in how we all have to absorb more expensive pieces of our daily life. So we're trying to avoid having to get into that situation, and hopefully if we can manage those capital projects, we'll be able to put a structure in place that'll keep us from there. But it's a very challenging, that was a very challenging time in Cleveland Utilities history. This is as well. So we want to make sure we're there to provide that service.
25 years ago, when we talked about the annexation plan of services and all of that, they would tell us that it would take 8 years to get the plan of services and the water, sewage, and streets and street lights and everything else. Now, police patrol this started the next week, and buses for school system, you know, they were picking the kids up and everything. But it was just amazing to me that it would take 7.5 to 8 years for the annexation plan to really be completed. So what I'm hearing today is that that's a lot better, you know.
We're trying our
But I know
very
we're
best.
growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Easements are one of the most challenging aspects of what we do. With our facilities being underground in most cases, acquiring the right-of-way or the easement to get that utility across someone's property, that's very challenging, just like the city runs into on their projects. But we work every single day to try to make sure that doesn't hold up a project.
And those sites are non-contiguous, might mention that.
That's true. So as Tim alluded to, when we do go outside the contiguous boundary of the city, getting to that location can be a challenge. And then trying to size the infrastructure appropriately for one parcel, and then to find out that parcel now grows to 3 or 5, the infrastructure ends up being too small. And so it's a challenge to make sure that you get enough capacity to serve not only that development, but what is the future capacity look like for those developments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the council? Thank you, Marshall.
Just stay put. All right.
He says don't go too far.
Yeah, that's right. Don't go too far. So that's a lot. You just got a lot of information. But I think from a layman's perspective, it's easy to understand the challenges that we're facing, to say the least. You know, the one thing that I would ask that all of you all, even those that are here in the audience, would take away, Doug knows this, as we talk about economic development a lot, what I'm about to say. The utility should always be trying to provide the absolute best service at the absolute lowest cost. We talk about that a lot in public power, but today you heard a lot of challenges associated with wastewater. It's the same. We still want to be able to provide the highest level of service at the absolute lowest cost. That's what public utilities is about. That's why Cleveland Utilities was formed 80-odd years ago. So we'll continue that mission, and you can have the confidence that your public utility authority will do that. That's important for us to remember. We're here to serve, and we want to serve at a high level, so we will always do that. And in talking about service, let's talk about a new service. Marshall talked about a whole new division being in this budget year for 2025. It's certainly historical that Cleveland Utilities is in the broadband business. We've been working on this, you know, I almost want to say 15 plus years it's been looked at and tried to be executed. The timing happened to be right at this point in time. And with no pun intending, it's going at light speed. So with that being said, Marshall and Walt have both been heavily involved with all the parties that are coming together to make this a real thing in our community. And they worked hard with it. So I'm going to let them talk a little bit about more of where we're at and what you can expect, and it's a lot to be excited about, and we'll need your help in getting that word out as well. So this is just a small step in that. So with that, Walt, talk about where we're at.
Where we're at. This is the exciting part, right? So good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity for us to tell you where we're at with our fiber project. To give a little perspective, it's not been 15 years, but it's almost been 24 years we've been studying this. And 2 years ago, we really pushed through, and we've been making a lot of progress since then. As of right now, all of the backbone fiber and the preliminary design area fiber, which the design area will get the fiber to the homes. So we got a backbone ring that we're building first, and then we'll have design areas that will push the fiber to the home and to the business. All of that design work has been completed, the preliminary design work. What's the difference between preliminary and final is the make ready. We've got to go out there and make sure that there's room on the poles for us to hang the fiber if we need to make adjustments on those poles. So all the final design and prints are pending make ready solutions. Currently, make ready fielding and existing conduit proofing is ongoing throughout our system. Everywhere on our system, you're liable to see Cleveland Utilities contractors out there looking at the poles, measuring. We're getting detailed information of all the attachments that are on our poles, and then that gets passed to the design team to place where the fiber will be hung on those poles. Also, 20 to 25 years ago, we went in and started putting spare conduit for all of our all the electric underground subdivisions. We ran spare conduit in all of those. Now we're going to go back and proof and make sure they've not collapsed, make sure there's somebody not in it, utilizing it. So that process is taking place throughout the system right now. We have obtained all the material, well, we've given the award on the RFP for all the materials for this project. Both the backbone fiber build, the fiber build to the home, and the drops and fiber drops. We have secured the old Cleveland Daily Banner building to house and warehouse our fiber. If you're over there, though, you'll see some reels of underground conduit out there that's orange in the back right now, but inside where the old printing presses were, that we're storing our materials. We built a mock-up of the system, which it's basically, it looks like what we were putting out in the field over at our Harrison Building location off of Free Will Road. If you drive by there right in the front of the fence, you can see an example of almost every type of fiber construction we'll put on about 4 or 5 poles. So if any of y'all would like to...
Yes, and if any of y'all would ever like a tour of that, just give us a shout. We'll take you out there, and it actually shows all the different types of connections. So you can say, well, if I have this kind of feed to this residential, or if this corner exists, It has all that laid out so you can see exactly where the fiber goes.
It gives examples of tangent construction, of dead end, of 90s, of where it will hang in relationship to an existing street light, or the way it hangs. We've got two transformers hung out there. It shows sometimes we go above and sometimes we go below with the neutral.
Yeah, one thing that we probably don't mention a lot is Cleveland Utilities fiber is going to be a little unique compared to other fiber companies. We're going to be in what's called the power space. So it's actually in the same area as our electric space is. If that makes sense. So it's better protected. We have to have a higher level of trained people that are going to work on that, but it's a good thing for us in the long run.
Right. And it's a special kind of fiber. It's called ADSS. It's all dielectric, self-supporting. So there is no metal messenger that you have to hang it or lash it to, okay? So it's just, it will not conduct electricity. So that's why we're able to hang it in that power space. So the backbone construction, the first phase of the backbone construction started approximately 6 weeks ago. They're heading out from our office. They've moved around some on Freewell Road, up Villa Drive, and they're currently jigged out all the way out Paul Huff, headed towards Stewart Road, headed that way. So we've got about 9 miles of the fiber backbone that has been completed. I got an update on that this morning. So after we finish the first segment of the backbone, that will make connectivity from the main office over to our Ocoee substation. So what we've got at the main office, at Ocoee substation, and at the South Cleveland substation, we put a hut or a building at Ocoee, and we have one that's been installed at South Cleveland. Once that first phase is connected, our direct internet access will come from 2 different directions through 2 different cities. We'll get internet from Atlanta, and we'll get internet from Virginia, okay? And so once we have that connectivity and tested and the electronics in, that's when we're going to start building our first design area, which, as I mentioned, goes to fiber to the home, right? It'll be starting our first segment for residential and commercial customers. And when we finish up the first segment of the backbone, we'll continue on with half the crews, continuing the loop on around to South Cleveland and then on back to the main office. But we'll split those crews up and we'll start building the design areas. To give you an idea of when, it's very possible that we could be working on that first design area by the end of May, which is a good thing. All the electronics have been selected and are on order. We chose Arista for our backbone core network, and then Adtran for our optical network terminals. We call them ONTs, and our residential gateways, which we call RGs. Residential gateway is the router Wi-Fi unit that sits in your home. The ONT will be internal also, and that's where our fiber terminates. Okay. So our website will, in the very near future, be updated with a portal in it where you'll be able to go in and type in your address, and it will tell you, number one, it'll verify you're on our electric system, which you have to be an electric customer of Cleveland Utilities to receive broadband services. It will give you, once you put your address in, it will tell you when we plan on being there. It could be 3rd quarter of 2024, it could be 4th quarter of 24, 1st quarter of 25. It'll give you that information. And as we move through this build out, as we get more and more done, that will be dynamic. It'll change. You can check back in 3 months and it may say, instead of 3rd quarter 2024, it may give you the month of 2024, right? And then as we get ready to offer it out, you'll be able to pre-register to sign up for services at any time for the whole system. And then you will also be able to, and then we'll contact you when we're ready to provide those services, and you can sign up for service at that point. The entire build for our entire electric system is predicted to take 18 months to build out. So even if we're looking at, somebody's got to be first, somebody's got to be one of the last design areas that we do. 18 months is not a very long time to have this completely built out. And I am ready to let Marshall add anything, or I'll start answering questions.
So normally the quickest question most people ask is, how soon? So Walt talked about that. The next question we get is how much will it cost, right?
Yep.
They're going. You guys probably want to hear that. So I would entertain y'all to to talk about what that rate structure might look like, or that fee structure.
Okay. So when you talk about fees, we'll just talk about residential. So today, the plan is to offer a 400 megabit per second plan, which will be our entry-level tier. That'll be at $59.99. We'll have a 1 gig service, and it'll be $69.99. And then we'll also offer a 2.5 gig service, and it'll be $99.
Residential for
For
2.5?
residential. What's a little unique though, and so this is one of the exciting things for us, when you're getting into this business, you get to really kind of prescribe what do some of the new things look like, how do you charge for stuff. As our competitors, and you're fairly aware, when you get your bill, you've got a price that has how much you're paying for the service. But then you've also got a price for their box and a price for their technical service, and you end up adding all these fees, right? When you get a Cleveland Utilities fiber bill, it's one price. There's no add-ons for another box. There's no add-ons for us helping you. We're gonna handle this like we do everything else. It's one fee, and when you need us, we're there. And we're not gonna charge you to do it. We're
Will
not gonna-
will that be included in our current utility bill, or will it be a separate bill?
We are gonna run a separate bill. And this is another exciting thing. This will be the first time in our history that you will be able to choose your own due date. So for our customers, Ken laughs because he got that upon it. That's one of the most important things for our customers is they want to know when their bill's due. And with utilities, it's really prescribed by where you live. But when it comes to fiber, we're going to let you choose. So if you want it due on the 1st of the month or the 15th, we're going to give you that
You
flexibility.
gonna do that for electric, water, and sewer?
You would think it's funny, right? But we've been working on it.
Yeah.
We're trying. This is a proving ground for how do you do the process.
He says it's a cash flow issue. We'll see.
Marcia, you want to talk a little bit about your competition.
Yes, sir.
When we start this, your competition's going to undercut, I would assume, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, one thing that typically when they do offer this lower price, they're looking at contracts. You know, they're looking for you to sign up for a 1 or 2 year commitment at that price. Cleveland Utilities is not going to have any contracts associated with this. You sign up 1 month, you don't like it, you can leave the next month. No contracts, right? No installation fees, and plus the product that we're supplying is for the majority of the customers that are out there that currently have internet. Their product is not in comparison to what we're offering with the symmetrical speeds, and especially the full gig and the 2.5 gig.
And it would be impressive to know, we've had probably no less than 50 commercial customers call us in the last year wanting to know when is fiber going to be available at their business. And it's because our competitors have gone to them and said, oh, by the way, we're willing to serve you now with fiber. We wouldn't do that 5 years ago. We wouldn't do that 6 months ago. We'll do it today. But we need you to sign a 5-year contract. And those same people are picking up the phone and they're calling us, and they get to talk to Walt or myself, and we explain to them that there's no contract. And we'll bring it to your business at probably no cost to you, and we'll be happy to serve you at this rate. And it immediately changes that conversation. We have a list of companies that have asked us to hold our names. We want to know when our areas come available.
Is City Hall on that list?
We have worked that out.
Just
Joe
asking
has already signed up.
Asking for a friend.
Yep, Joe is ready.
Well, I have a silly question. I know you keep the 3 divisions now currently separate. This will be a 4th division separate. And like you, businesses, I've sent them to you. I've given them your number, right? And I mean, big businesses, they're there. This was budgeted on a certain percentage rollout. It's going to be a lot more than that. Will that offset the cost? Will that change the service? If you keep it inside the 4th division, what are you going to do?
How do you take that
Yeah,
cash?
you got 10 years in front of me on these, in that area, what do you do?
So the vast majority of this system is built by the electric division. And so the electric division will have to continue to invest in the system. So if fiber grows and it needs more capacity, the electric division, since it owns the asset, will have to grow also. The flip side of that is that fiber can then help invest in that facility. And so what that means is that electric is not having to spend its dollars as it once did, and that then allows you to keep the electric rates lower because you're not having to invest in some of this technology.
I knew that was coming. That would be great marketing, just so you know. I mean, just, because I know, I didn't think that the walls were as hard. I thought there had to be pole maintenance, depreciation, et cetera.
There is.
And so that would be,
And so there's metrics in, it's called a network lease revenue. If you look in the electric division this year, you'll see that line item where it's coming back in. There are metrics inside that calculation that get tweaked over time. So as new investments have to be brought online, that revenue share can increase, meaning that electric can
Depending on
recapture,
size.
correct,
Yeah. Okay.
more of what's necessary.
I want,
You do realize we're building out for the whole electric system now. We're going in front of every customer's home. So that investment will not have to be repeated unless we grow,
Does
right?
EPB have that same model?
Absolutely.
They do. Okay.
Absolutely.
I want all the council members to be able to ask all the questions they want, but just for a reminder, in 6 minutes, we're going to have to recess. And I just want to make sure that we all are aware of that time. Councilman Cassidy.
Yeah, when we first talked about the broadband and the cost of it, it was like $8 million, is that correct?
No,
Is-
Way more.
it's a good
What
deal.
was it?
It was originally projected at 72.
72, has it, since the cost has gone up and everything, has it gone up? the cost
Actually,
on
that number
part?
has gone down.
Huh?
It's gone down.
Has it gone down?
As we
Okay.
did RFPs and as we put our model out for pricing, right now, we're projected at about 56 million.
Okay.
So
All right.
better.
And delivered to homes and
Have an
businesses
abundance
for
of-
free, it kind of concerns me a little bit.
Deliver home on.
To the services, to put it in free, it kind of concerns me. It's like the business I'm in, the box business, I'll see the first truck free, the second truck's gonna cost you twice as much. So I'm concerned there is a cost to that, to cover, to put that in, man hours and whatever it may be, materials and all that stuff. So if y'all can do it, I don't see as a business standpoint you can give that away. I really don't.
Well, you know, I would circle back a little bit, Tom, to the level of customer service. We think the difference in our product, not just from a superior product by and large, but it really is going to be sold on a customer service
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, people need to know that when they call about their service, they're calling Cleveland Utilities, they're not calling a foreign country. If they call and they need assistance, we will roll a truck. You know,
Yeah.
we'll have the ability to do that. That's really the difference that we're seeing other utilities that have entered this business. And the other thing that we really didn't talk about in terms of investment, Bill, is the idea that fiber will pay for distribution automation. And that's what Walt and I would quickly tell you was near and dear to our hearts. It makes the electric system stronger, more reliable because of that, and fiber will pay for that. And that's saving millions.
So
Councilman,
we'll have that
Yeah.
connectivity, that high-speed, low-latency connectivity to the meters too, right? So that helps with load management, it helps with rate structures down the road, and there's just so many possibilities once that infrastructure is in place. And you have to realize that the fiber itself, the size of the pipe, it's not like I'll have to replace that fiber in future. All I have to do is replace the electronics that drive that shoot the light down that fiber.
Councilman Hughes, you had a question?
I do. Following up on Councilman Cassidy, I think the next question, when you talk about bringing it to the residents free, what's your competition doing? What do they charge for bringing it to the residents?
In most cases, your new residential customer today, they wouldn't charge you an install fee. If they did, it might be $99, but they'll waive that if you'll go on auto pay or paperless billing or something of that nature. And as we've all sat down and discussed, and as we've gotten market data and talked to some of the experts in this field, the simpler you can make this and the cleaner that you can make the customer see how you price things and how you do business, the market studies show that you are vitally more successful. When they get a bill and you sold me it was $55 a month, but when I got my bill it was $90, that's when you get an upset customer. And that's a call that you then have to take, and you have to try to calm somebody down. We don't want to do business that way. We want to do business like we would want to interact with any other company. And so we're going all the way to the extreme of talking about if you have to be disconnected because you didn't pay your bill, are we going to charge you a fee for that?
No.
In our minds, we don't. It's an electronic process.
Okay.
And so it's just rethinking that whole model and providing that level of service that we all want to have.
All right, any other questions? Thank you so much, gentlemen, from Cleveland Utilities and the Authority. We're grateful. We're going to have to declare a recess until 3 p.m.
2:45
3 p.m.
p.m.